Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, Tom Reads Things. My name is Tom. Thank you very much for joining me again. I hope you are all very well. Just as I've started talking, I can hear my dogs wondering who on earth I'm talking to. There we go. There it is. They don't know who I'm talking to. It's all going to kick off. Carnage. Come here. Come on. Come on. Knew it wasn't going to be long. And here she is. Oh, you going to help me? Are you going to help me? Look who it is. Hello, you as well. Hello. Oh, they've gone back upstairs, thank God. Okay, so I thought today I'd do something a little bit different. I thought I'd do a book review. I don't know whether I'm gonna do many book reviews on this channel, but I thought I would try one out, see if I liked it, see if you liked it, and go from there really. So the book that I'm gonna be talking about today is this book here. It's called Blood and Sugar, and it's by Laura Shepherd Robinson. Now this book is about the slaving trade in Georgian London in the late 18th century in the UK. So the best way really for me to talk to you about it is to probably read you the blurb. Here we go. June 1781, an unidentified body hangs upon a hook at Deptford Dock, horribly tortured and branded with a slave as mark. Some days later, Captain Harry Corsham, a war hero embarking upon a promising parliamentary career, is visited by the sister of an old friend. Her brother, passionate abolitionist Tad Archer, had been about to expose a secret that he believed could cause irreparable damage to the British slaving industry. He said people were trying to kill him, and now he is missing. To discover what happened to Tad, Harry is forced to pick up the threads of his friend's investigation, delving into the heart of the conspiracy Tad had unearthed. But by doing so, he risks threatening his political prospects, his family happiness, and forcing a reckoning with his past that could expose secrets with the power to destroy him, and that is only if he can survive the mortal dangers awaiting him in Deptford. So, that's the blurb. So yeah, this book is about a character called Harry Corsham, who was in the British Army fighting in the US in the late 18th century. And he returns back to England and to London to discover that a long-lost friend of his, Tad Archer, a passionate abolitionist that he met at his time in university, has been murdered in Deptford, which at the time was a very busy slaving port. So one thing to mention about this book, as you've probably gathered, is that it's a crime thriller, and it is most definitely the most plot-driven novel I've ever read. It's definitely a page-turner. A lot happens in this book, which sometimes is a good thing. It certainly makes it very easy to read. There's not a huge amount of character development really in this book, so if you're a person that really likes strong character development in a book and a kind of slightly less pacey read where things are built up over time, then perhaps this might not be for you. One thing that was quite interesting that I found about this book is, although it's a page turner, although it's very plot driven, although it's very easy to read and you kind of want to know what happens next all the time, I found that I wasn't really very driven to pick it up every day. I didn't mind if I had a day where I didn't read it. And I'm not really sure why. I can't really put my finger on it. I think mainly it's probably because it is so plot driven, and actually, even though I was invested in the story and wanted to know what happened, I wasn't hugely invested in the characters. But that's not to say that you won't be, so do give it a try. It's quite a heavy book. Or actually, talking about heavy books, if you haven't been over to his channel, Kieran over at Key Reads has recently done a video where he's putting books into boxes to move, and as he's doing so, he talks about the books that he's packing up, and I thought, God, anyone who's moved house knows how heavy books are to move, and I thought that was a really good idea for a video, so I'll link that video down below. If you haven't been to his channel yet, he's got some great videos over there, so do go over and check out his channel, and that video in particular I thought was really good. So yeah, it's quite a heavy book. It's quite long, and I don't think it needs to be as long as it probably is. It's very long for a book that doesn't go into a huge amount of detail about characters. It's, as I said, it's very plot driven. Some people love that. I like a good mix, personally. One thing I will say about this book is that it deals with some very tough subject matter. Obviously, the slave trade is a very difficult subject to write about, must be a very difficult subject to write about, and in this book it is sometimes a very difficult subject to read about. Laura Shepherd Robinson does not pull any punches when she talks about the issues of the time, and when she talks about the practices that went on in Deptford at that time. She really kind of gets to the guts of what was going on, and she doesn't hold back. She doesn't try to protect us from the realities of what happened during that time in the slaving trade. And that is one of the real strengths of this book. It's quite difficult to read sometimes, as I said, but I think it's quite important to read. My experience of coming to understand about the slave trade really was based on anything I've read and films that were based in the US. And you don't really, in a lot of books or a lot of films, get to understand what happened to the slaves as they were taken to their final kind of destination where they were going to be working as slaves. And this book kind of delves into how the slaves were brought from Africa, how they stopped off at Deptford and London, and how they were then taken onwards to the US and to the Caribbean from there. The practices on board the ships were obviously horrific, and Laura Shepherd Robinson goes into just enough detail, I think, to kind of make you understand the severity of what was happening. She does it very respectfully, so that is a real strength of this book. It's a very difficult subject matter to write about, but I think she does it really, really well. One thing I really liked about this book is that it is, as I said, Laura Shepherd Robinson doesn't pull any punches when she's talking about London in the 18th century, and it is this kind of a scathing attack on the real underbelly of corruption in London at that time. If that's something that would interest you, then definitely pick up this book. It kind of reminded me in some ways about Dickens' kind of scathing attacks sometimes on like the legal system. You know, the way that he would write about corruption and the legal system in Victorian period. This kind of book reminded me a little bit of that, and the author Laura Shepherd Robinson goes into quite good detail about kind of corruption and how people could be bought and the different practices going on in the high levels of society of Georgian London. So that was really interesting to read about. Laura Shepherd Robinson in this book also touches upon the kind of sex worker industry in 18th century London, which I'd already read a bit about in Dan Cruikshank's The Secret History of Georgian London, which was really interesting. So that's another book to pick up if you're interested in the sex work industry of Georgian London. Like I've said, some parts of this book are going to quite a lot of detail, and some parts really don't. So, for example, the opening of the book talks about the docks of Deptford and the mist rising, and how it's called the Devil's Breath. I think she describes it as. Laura Shepherd Robinson in this book sometimes is really able to create a sense of atmosphere. Especially when she is writing as the voice of one of the characters explaining what's happened to them as part of the slave trade. But some parts of this book can skip over situations which I think it would be better to have gone into a bit more detail on, to kind of maintain that level of atmosphere throughout the book. There's a part in the second half of the book where they're describing something which happened on a slave ship, and it's truly horrifying, and the way Laura Shepherd writes about that is very atmospheric and very moving, really. So yeah, that is my review of Blood and Sugar by Laura Shepherd Robinson. Do pick it up if any of this subject matter interests you. I think it's probably definitely worth a read, and most people I'm sure will be able to get through this a lot quicker than I did. So thank you very much for joining me again. My next video will be on classics. So I'm going to do a video where I talk about my favourite classics, and the reasons why I like them so much, and some of the reasons also why I have a bit of a love love-hate relationship with classics. Okay, so thanks very much for joining me and see you next time.